So, all right, last stream lagged out. This is part two. I'll just label them part one and part two. So apologies to everyone. Nothing I can control. I think when the weather gets bad, that might be a factor in the lag, and it's been pouring like crazy the past day or so. So I don't know. Maybe maybe that has a factor in it. It seems to be correlated somehow. I don't know. I don't know what else. There's nothing else I can do. I'm hardwired and everything. So yeah, it'll happen. But yeah, so we're going to continue on with our preview of the Western Conference. We made it over to the Western Conference. And
Did you
we
close Minecraft?
What?
Did you close your Minecraft
Yes,
stream?
yes.
Okay.
I never streamed it. What are
I'm
you
just
talking
messing
about?
with. I'm just joking.
Oh my god, Eric. So we were continuing on with the second part of our preview, and we were talking about Memphis. So what you were about to say something about Memphis? I don't remember.
I'll just say with Jaren Jackson being out the first month, I feel like they had a pretty easy schedule at the beginning of last year that kind of had people overvalue them a little bit. I think their timeline, I still like them long term. I just think they're going to have a bit of a regression this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can put San Antonio with them, actually. That's what I switched up right before we lagged out. I don't know. I think Memphis probably 11th, San Antonio 12th. Tier them however you guys want. I don't care. But you got... Yeah, I mean, you remember the Phoenix Suns when they almost made the playoffs? They won like 45 games, but they missed out, and then they were trying to win, and then the following season they took a big step back because they had overachieved the season before. I feel like Memphis is kind of a slightly less volatile, team. They're got Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. They got a little better building blocks than that Phoenix team had, but I think it was kind of the same case where they overachieved last season. Easy schedule, didn't have to play the hard back half of their second schedule. Completely fell apart down the stretch in the bubble. Blew their 3.5 game 8th place lead over Portland in only 8 games. And then Jaren Jackson Jr. being out, yeah, I think they are the 11th best team. Next tier I have. And this is honestly this is tough because I feel like any of these teams could potentially jump up. Like all these teams have upside in their own special ways, whatever. But the next tier I have.
Before you say that, if Harden gets traded, they're absolutely falling back down to one of these other tiers we talked about.
Yeah.
But yeah,
we'll
just assume for the record that Harden is going to stay.
Yes. I actually forgot to even list Houston. I don't even know. The next tier I had was Golden State, Phoenix, and New Orleans. Would you put Houston in that tier as well right now as constructed, or would you put them a tier above that? I would probably put them a tier above that, I think.
They're either on the lower end of the tier above or the top of this tier, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're kind of stuck in between. But Golden State, Phoenix, New Orleans, do you agree with that?
Yep.
Golden State, I mean, without Clay, it's tough, but you still got Steph, and you still got Draymond, and Draymond's looking skinnier. Draymond's looking more in shape, so I don't know how that affects his game. And you got Oubre there now. Wiggins, I think, is overrated, but you got him. You got Wiseman. Maybe he can win Rookie of the Year. Like, he's a very talented guy. So you have some upside on that team still where they could potentially jump up into the tier above. But right now, I feel comfortable kind of putting them in this tier, like on the fringe of the playoffs.
Yeah, if obviously they had Clay, I would put them up in probably the tier just below the Lakers in that group. But without Clay, that's going to be really tough for them. You saw they struggled pretty bad because, I mean, they haven't really played without Durant either for a few years. At least they're good players like Curry and Draymond because they barely played last year. So losing two talented guys like that and trying to work in guys like Oubre and Wiggins who you have to like help along more than you would with just knowing where Clay and KD and how good they are. You don't have to like be concerned about them not showing up for games and stuff like that. So yeah, I think they're going to struggle a little bit, but if Curry is healthy, that they're definitely able to make the playoffs. I just don't think they're going to be fighting for a high seed.
Yeah, Phoenix might be the most controversial team. I just don't think they're. I think they're overrated right now. Chris Paul had a really good season last year, but he's still up there in age. I expect him to be a little bit worse this season, and you're adding him to a team that like overachieved in the bubble, right? I think the Suns overachieved in the bubble, and they went 8-0, beat the Clippers. Like they weren't anywhere near that good. They just played phenomenal. I don't know. You add them to it. You add Chris Paul to a mediocre non-playoff team, and I think they become a fringe playoff team. I think that's pretty justified. They have the talent to jump up a tier, but just remains to be seen. Ayton, can he take that next step in his development? I don't really expect that too much, but Chris Paul will make him look better. You got Mikal Bridges there now with a starting spot. He's kind of been starting on the bench, back and forth, but now you got Oubre out of there for Chris Paul, opening up that spot for him. You got Saric, you got Cameron Johnson, who we clowned the Suns picking him at 11 last season, but now it actually looks like a decent pick, considering he shot the ball great last season. You got some pieces around their kind of big three, but the big three is obviously Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton. We just have to see how high of a level that threesome plays at, because it's Chris Paul fitting in at 36 years of age. We just have to wait and see on that.
Like Hector said, they got Jay Crowder too.
Jay Crowder, he's a bit overrated in my opinion, but that's still a solid pickup, and he does provide kind of what they need. So
yeah. So Chris Paul was relatively healthy last year. He hadn't been in a while. So what? Like we said, we can't factor in health, but that's a guy who hasn't necessarily been able to be counted on for full seasons, and now you're talking about trading for him. And I actually thought Rubio played pretty well last year for the Suns. So I don't know. Obviously, Chris Paul is better than Rubio, but at this point in his career, other than obviously Chris Paul's like a really smart player and was basically like the coach of Oklahoma City last year, which is more than Rubio could provide. But I think like playing style and on the court, I don't know if it's going to be like as big of a jump as people are saying.
Yeah. The other team that I have there is New Orleans, who, Zion, does he turn into a superstar this year or something? You got Brandon Ingram there, who was vastly improved last season. You got Lonzo Ball there. He's still young. You add Eric Bledsoe, which is a weird guy to add to that, but he basically replaces Drew Holiday. You got Steven Adams coming in. I don't like his fit, but he's still, a talented player. The fit of some of those players is weird together, so that's why I don't have them higher. Like talent level, I think they're a little bit above these two teams. Actually, I think they're a little bit above Golden State this year, and I think they're a little bit above Phoenix. But the fit of their pieces isn't anywhere near as cohesive as those two teams. So that's why I have them down here. I think they probably finish actually below those two teams at 10th, but you do have a lot of talent, so it's just like the fit question marks that are the deal with New Orleans for me. But when you have this much talent, like, you have to respect the fact that they could jump up into that next tier teams and maybe be in the mix with a team like Dallas and Utah.
Yeah, I don't like, because I think losing Drew is going to hurt them a little bit. So I have them 10th personally. Like you said, they do have the upside to sneak up in there a little higher, but I know you really like Kyra. I just don't know if he's going to come in like this year and be that much of a difference maker right off the bat.
He might not even play, honestly.
Yeah,
you got Bledsoe and Ball.
I'm not high on Ball. He was terrible in the bubble. He was a little better during the regular season. And I felt like they should have gone all in on a fast-breaking, up-tempo type offense. But then, like you said, you bring in a Steven Adams who doesn't fit that style of play whatsoever.
He has
so,
really good outlet passes, so
yeah,
maybe they viewed
that's
him as
true,
like kind of a break starter that can throw the outlet pass up ahead, and he
well,
did take a step forward in his passing. I don't know, so
that's
maybe
true.
he's just a
Right.
break starter for them.
Maybe they think he can just get every rebound and then Zion can cherry pick like he does to get half his points, and then you can just throw it ahead to him or whatever. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. Like that's the thing with the fit issues. Like
Yep.
maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. We have to wait and see on that for sure.
Yep. But yeah, I think the Suns I would put seventh, and then I think the Warriors maybe I don't know who's the other team we're talking about in this.
Warriors, Phoenix, Pelicans, and then Houston
Yeah. Yeah, so
in between.
I'd probably put the Warriors eighth then,
Yeah.
or no, wait, ninth, and then Suns eighth, I guess. We still have 7 teams ahead of them, but yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, man, dude. Like, the Suns at 8 just feel too low to me, but also I don't know. Like it is deeper Western Conference than the Eastern Conference, even like because the Eastern Conference falls off at 7. I feel like Western Conference kind of falls off around 9th to 11th. So yeah, I mean I can kind of agree with that. I'm kind of undecided, but jumping into the next tier, I have 5 teams in this tier, with Houston being definitely at the bottom. Houston could probably be in a tier by themselves, I think. But you got Portland, Denver, Utah, Dallas, and Houston. I don't know who you want to start with, but
Well, yeah, I'd probably put Houston just because they're a mess, and that never really pans out for a team that's this dysfunctional and has this many question marks and issues. It's rare that they just all of a sudden don't have any of those issues through the regular season and are fine. And I just, as much as I think Harden can carry a team, I don't know if they're quite as good with how tough the West is. So, yeah, I mean, I like some of their moves. I just don't think it's going to be going to pay off for them in terms of regular season, like we talked about with Westbrook on the Wizards. He is a good regular season player, and he did win them a lot of games in the regular season last year. So I definitely put them at the end of that tier. This might surprise you, but I'm going to go on the record right now. I think Dallas is super overrated. And I would put them next. Well, one Porzingis isn't healthy, and that's a huge problem for them. And 2, Luka's another one of those guys, like I just mentioned with Harden, that can carry a team. But I feel like they made some moves this summer, or not summer, off season. So used to the summer being the off season, but this off season being like you lose a guy like Seth Curry, and I think that's going to hurt them so much because they brought in guys to replace him that aren't necessarily good shooters, and you combine that with a Luka who shot in the low 30 percentile. So like I feel like they're being a little overrated because they finished 7th last year. It's not like they were up there fighting for home court advantage or something. They were pretty clearly 7th, and I just don't like a lot of their fit of their roster. Whereas last year, I really liked what they were doing to put pieces around Luka, and I feel like they kind of ruined that a little bit this year.
Yeah, I mean their defense is a little bit better. Their spacing and offense is a little bit worse. It comes out pretty even to me. For a guy like Luka, it's like everybody's saying, oh, he's 20 years old, 21 years old. However, let me check. He's right now. Luka is 21 years old, almost 22. Turns 22 in a couple of months in February. He's 21 years old right now, so he's going to improve. But the better you get, the harder it is to elevate your game, right? Like he played at such a high level last year. It's going to be hard for him to improve on that. The only area that I see him improving in next year is maybe his 3-point shooting, because he did only shoot 31.6% from 3. But his rookie year, he shot better from 3 than his second season. He was not efficient from 3. He also shot 57% inside the arc Like, that is very, very good. For a player like him, I don't see him making 63% of his shots inside the arc. You know what I mean? He got to the free throw line 9.2 times per game. Per 36, he got to the free throw line basically 10 times a game. That's a ton. If anything, I see that regressing a little bit. Like, he played at such a high level last year that I don't see him really improving much this season, just because he was so great last year. And a lot of things he could improve upon is maybe improve his turnovers a little bit. He did average 4.3 turnovers per game, and improve his 3-point shooting. But how much is that really going to like raise the level of that team if everything else is the same? If they're missing Porzingis, if Porzingis isn't healthy and he's basically almost always hurt, like that, I don't see the jump that a lot of like experts in analysis are predicting. I kind of agree with you. I wouldn't say they're super overrated, but they are definitely a bit overrated. I'm comfortable putting them on the same like plane as like Utah and Portland if they struggle, and Denver if they struggle. I'm comfortable putting them there, but a lot of people have them over like Denver and Portland and Utah, and I just don't see how you can do that. I also have them 6 for that reason, just because the fit's a little bit worse, defense is a little better, offense a little worse. I don't see like how a guy like Luka is going to improve enough to raise the ceiling on that team much more than it was last season. So for those reasons, I think they're a bit overrated.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say about the Luka stuff is if you take him off that roster, that was not anywhere near a playoff team. They might have been one of the worst teams in the West last year. So like, just his ability to elevate his team, I think, is his biggest strength.
Yeah,
and
he's really, really good. Yeah.
So that's the only pause I have to making a statement like I think they're overrated, because he is good enough to just give him like 4 players and I think they'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's kind of the thing, is like he elevated last year's team so much. Is he really going to be able to elevate this year's team even more than he elevated last year's team? Because he elevated that team so drastically that it's going to be hard to outdo himself. You know what I mean? It's going to be hard to actually noticeably upraise that team even more this year. And I don't think the surrounding pieces, with Porzingis having questionable health, they got Josh Richardson for Seth Curry. I don't think that's an upgrade. They added James Johnson, like, cool. Good for them. Not really much of a difference maker to me. The roster isn't better, in my opinion. So it's going to have to come down to like Luka really raising his level of play even more, and I just don't see how it's going to drastically like what is it going to average 35 and 12? You know what I mean? Like he averaged 29 and 9 last year. That I don't know, man. I just don't see him being a guy who's going to average 35 and 12 and be the next MJ, because last year he played at a pretty much a superstar level, and honestly, like that statistic, like what he did last season, you could make a case for him being an MVP. You could put him in the MVP race, the top 3 in the MVP race. Like, he might be the MVP this season if they finish 4th. It's just, I don't see really how he's going to improve drastically over what he did last season because of how good last season was.
Yeah, I think the point that hits home for me that you made was the fact that he elevated basically a lottery team into the 7th seed. But the roster isn't that much different. Plus, you had the Porzingis injury, so how much more can he elevate that's a similar team or maybe even a slightly worse team? So yeah, that's why I think 6 is pretty safe for them. And a lot of people see that as like a down step, and then he might not get in as many MVP votes as he would have gotten, because people would be like, wow, all they could get was the 6th seed. Meanwhile, maybe a team like Portland or someone like that is up there a few spots higher, and then they could be like, well, Portland has this guy Damian Lillard who propelled his team to a 3 seed or something, and so like I hope that's how it plays out.
Yeah, I will make this prediction right now. If Giannis doesn't win MVP, I think it'll be one of Damian Lillard, Nikola Jokic, or Luka Doncic that wins MVP. Whichever one of those teams is higher, I think one of those teams will be the 3 seed. And if it's not Giannis winning it, whichever one of those teams is the 3 seed, their guy will win MVP. That is like kind of a bold prediction. I mean, but LeBron and AD cancel each other out. Steph, I don't think the team's going to be good enough. James Harden, all this trade stuff, like I don't think he's really a candidate, and that opens the door for Jokic, Lillard, and Doncic MVP wise. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I have a tough time seeing a guy like Jokic getting enough votes. He's just not. I mean, I know he's flashy with his passes and stuff, but I don't think he wows people enough, or average enough points per game to get up there. And I don't know. I think either guy in the Lakers could still win it, especially if they run away with the number 1 seed. But yeah, there could be definitely some voter fatigue with the number. With giving it to Giannis. I don't know, what if KD's healthy, he could sneak back into that.
But they're going to load manage him, and he's I don't know. With guys that get load managed, it's hard to predict, but I feel like he's going to at least sit out 8-10 games, and at that point, like if he deals with ace or injury as well on top of that, which he definitely could coming back, I don't know. Like KD is, I shouldn't say it would be one of Jokic, Lillard, and Doncic if Giannis doesn't win it. KD definitely could. But I feel like dark horse-wise, this is a good year for dark horse MVP candidates, especially in the Western Conference with that 3 seed being wide open. And you having a guy like Doncic and Lillard, who I think I would also agree they're higher than Jokic. But, if Jokic gets even better this year, he's already statistically really, really good. And if they get the 3 seed, man, if you're 3 seed or higher, like I feel like for the most part you need to be 3 seed or higher to win MVP. So I don't know, it's intriguing. Let's move on to who you have 5th. Who do you have 5th?
Probably put Utah at 5th.
Okay, I agree with that as well. I see a lot of people saying they might miss the playoffs or be the 8th or 7th seed. Utah always gets slept on going into the regular season. And maybe it's just a small market thing. I feel like they always get a little bit underrated. They didn't have Bogdanovich in the bubble. They're going to have him back. Gobert got paid. You got Gobert, Mitchell, Bogdanovich, who's really underrated, Joe Ingles. You got Clarkson off the bench, who's a great guy off the bench. They needed him. I don't know if Favors starts or if Favors comes off the bench, but either way, you'll have probably one of Joe Ingles or Derek Favors off the bench. And then you'll have Royce O'Neal off the bench, who's underrated. Like, their bench is a little bit better by the addition of Derek Favors, whether or not he starts. So they're a little bit deeper. Their bench has always kind of been their problem. But they have 8 good NBA players that would be at least solid starters on decent teams, in my opinion. Maybe you could argue that in regards to Royce O'Neal, but he is a glue guy that fits in really well with the rest of the pieces they have, right? And maybe Donovan Mitchell, he's still young. Maybe he takes a little bit of a step up. They have a lot of talent. I think they are a little bit more talented than a team like Dallas. I think they are more talented than Phoenix, Golden State, Houston, even if they keep Harden. So I would put them 5th. What parts of that do you agree with? Do you disagree with any of that? What's your take on them?
Yeah, I think they got a pretty solid 8-man rotation or so. The thing with Utah is they're always in that 5th to 6th range, it seems like. So even if they're supposed to be higher than that, they always come back down and finish there. And years that they're maybe not quite thought of as a playoff team, I've seen them anywhere from 2 to 9th too. So quite a big discrepancy on a lot of these teams. But I just think they're a really solid team. It would have been interesting to see if they would have not choked that 3-1 lead against Denver, to see how far they would have gone, if they could have taken down the Clippers the way that the Nuggets did. I don't know if they'll have a little bit of a hangover from that or not. And then you have the whole, who knows how much of this is true, but the whole Gobert and Donovan Mitchell stuff in the locker room, and that they locked both of those guys up long term. I can't believe the contract they gave Rudy Gobert, but they're in a tough position because they're never going to get a guy like that to replace him in free agency, but it's still a massive overpay for a center who is somewhat limited on the offensive end. I don't know what you thought of that.
Yeah, I don't think it's a massive overpay. It is an overpay, but I wouldn't say it's massive. I think Gobert at this point is getting underrated by a lot of NBA fans because he has such a drastic positive impact on the defense. He is maybe the most impactful defender in the league. And yes, he's limited offensively, but his finishing has improved. He averages 15 points per game on 69% shooting. You know what I mean? He's a really good lob target, really good pick and roll big. He's a really, really good rebounder. You know, he's one of those guys that does a lot of the little things. He's not the flashy guy, but he has a huge impact on winning you basketball games. A lot of Jazz fans actually say he's more impactful to their team winning games than Donovan Mitchell is. And if Donovan Mitchell got that type of extension, I don't think people would be saying it's an overpay at all. Now, obviously, Donovan Mitchell is younger, so has more upside and has superstar potential, where Gobert is what he is and probably won't be much more than what he is right now. But in terms of impact on winning, I don't think it's that much of an overpay. It's a little bit of an overpay, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's massive.
Here's why I say that, because in the league nowadays, I don't think you can win a title paying that much money to a kind of throwback center type. And
why?
I just feel like, $40-50 million a year is like it just kind of hamstrings you. Like we've seen with like Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, hamstringing the Blazers salary for several years now. But like if you have like superstar player like Damian Lillard, I feel like that's okay. But like, didn't Gobert just like make his first All-Star team last year or something? Like, I know it's kind of a popularity contest. I'm not saying it's completely relevant, but like I feel like he's very impactful, especially on the defensive end. Like you mentioned, he's got skills on offense that you can utilize in sets and stuff like that. But I just feel like tying that much money up to a center, unless they're like an elite playmaking center like a Jokic, or maybe even Embiid if he's healthy, I think you can get away with it there. But I don't like giving a guy like that much money when, especially when you compare him to a guy like Nurk who's making 12-13 million a year.
Yeah, I don't see how that contract. I don't agree with that contract limiting them as much as you think, because with just you got possibly the most impactful defensive player, right? So paying that guy, it's not an overpay on the defensive end, right? It would just be an overpay for like, how he might limit your offense, but I don't think he limits the offense quite as much as a lot of fans think, just because he's a guy that finishes extremely well inside, a good offensive rebounder, like good lob target, good dump off threat, very, very efficient. Like, I don't know. It's like you look at a guy like Bam, and it's like, what does Bam provide that Gobert doesn't? He's a little better playmaker, a little bit more fluid defensively, but I wouldn't say Bam's a better defender, So it's like, I don't know. But if a guy like that in the next couple of years got the Gobert type of contract, I feel like people wouldn't think it's as much of an overpay as the contract Gobert just got. I don't know. It's just like, I feel like, the league has gone so far against the traditional center towards like the modern big that people underestimate the old school things that Gobert can provide that really have a huge impact on winning. It's definitely an overpay. It's just like, he has such a huge impact on winning that it's not massive in my opinion. It's an interesting debate though.
I wouldn't pay Bam that contract either because I don't know. It's just like if you're not, those guys aren't even in consideration. Like when people name like their top 10 to 15 players, like you never hear Gobert or Bam being mentioned. So like if they're not even in the conversation for those positions, like I feel like getting a super max type contract is I don't know. Like Bam might be kind of sneaking into that, like Reese says, but yeah.
I would say like it's not an overpay for a top 20 player paying them that contract. If a player is like top 20 in terms of their impact on winning, then it's not really an overpay. Gobert, I'd probably put, and people would probably say I'm overrating him, but I'd probably put him in like the 21 to 25 range.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. See, I've been banging this door for a long time. I don't. The Supermax contracts to me are actually like a negative thing to the franchises. And I wish that if a contract, like, you see like a guy like Carmelo signs a minimum contract, he actually gets paid like almost $3 million a year, but it only counts $1.6 million to the cap because like the NBA covers the difference, right? So I wish that the NBA would make a rule, because the Supermax contracts are designed to keep players like Gobert, keep players like Damian Lillard in small market towns. But what it does is you have to pay so much more to keep those players that it takes up, in Dame's situation, by the end of it's going to take like over a third to almost 40% of the cap, I think, at one point. So I don't understand why they don't just have it be like it counts as a maximum contract towards the salary cap, and then they get a bonus for being an awesome player and for staying in that city, but it doesn't penalize the team moving forward. So like,
yeah,
if Gobert was just on like a regular max contract, that's probably the most I would pay him. I wouldn't have gone over that amount to keep him, but I understand they have to, though, because they're not going to be able to replace a guy like Gobert if they let him walk after this season either. So yeah, it's just tough.
Yeah, I would have, if I was in their position and it was lose Gobert or pay him that contract, I probably would have paid him that contract, even though it's an overpay, because you're basically just stuck between a rock and a hard place.
And one thing to support your side of the argument is, I mean, it's Utah. Like, there's not a lot of people banging down, especially with how, the politics of it have panned out over the last few years. So
yeah, where their fans are.
So like that means they have to kind of keep the guys like that they have, especially like Donovan Mitchell. They have to keep those guys and hope that it eventually works out.
Yeah. Another thing to mention, Jackson posted his contract in 2025, 2026. Gobert is making $46.6 million. But you have to remember that $46 million in 2026 in the NBA is not the same as $46 million right now in the NBA, right, because the salary cap will be noticeably higher by then. We've kind of had it's kind of stagnated because of the pandemic and everything, but once we get out of the pandemic, it'll start going up again. So the salary cap in 2026 might be 125, 130 million instead of 110, right? So it's a little, it's not as, hopefully for the league and all that, right? And all the players and everybody. But, so $46 million like right now is like, oh my goodness, that's so much. But it's not going to be quite as much in 2026 when he will be making $46 million. That's another thing to remember with a lot of these contracts.
Yeah, I just thought, because you look at guys, I'm trying to think of examples, but like Steven Adams and Rudy Gobert, I think are making about the same this year. You saw Whiteside last year in that range, the upper $25 to $30 million. It just, most of those contracts turned out to be kind of like, and so Rudy Gobert is probably the exception to that, but now you're paying him, up into the 40s and stuff. That might towards the end of that might look pretty bad. But Reese says, I don't know if he was talking to us necessarily or me, but he says we way underrate Gobert. I've been someone who's actually defended Gobert a lot in the past. I just wouldn't have given him close to a super max. But
there's a lot of fans that say Nurkic is better than him. I don't agree with that. For as much as I love Nurk.
I will say the way we run our offense and stuff, like Gobert wouldn't fit as well as the Nurkic pre-injury. But yeah, it's I don't know.
Let's jump into the top four and let's wrap this up. Here comes the interesting one. Who do you have fourth?
I had this switched up until
We're the same on this, I think.
Watching them play, I have to put the Blazers at 4.
Yeah, we're the same on that because I switched it too.
Yep. I had them better than Denver. I'm trying not to read too much into preseason. We've talked about this a lot, but I'm just going to need to see it like on the floor, some of these changes. If they make the proper changes, I think they can be as high as 2. But I think they're going to struggle implementing this and just trying to go between scrapping it or keep going with it. And I think it's going to cost them some games. And it's going to be the difference between getting one of the top seeds and unfortunately fighting for that 4th to 5th seed.
Yeah, I was on the fence. I had Denver and Portland pretty equally rated. I did have Portland 3, but after this preseason, I'm willing to put Denver 3, and it just kind of depends on some things. Anything under 4 for Portland is an underachieving regular season, in my opinion. Unless they get injuries and get the 6th seed and had Dame injured for a good portion of the season. You know what I mean? Then that wouldn't be underachieving at all. But assuming if they're healthy, 4 is as low as they should be because they're more talented than Dallas. Easily more talented than Dallas, in my opinion. And their pieces fit better than Dallas. And we're starting off a little bit more healthy than Dallas. We don't have Nurkic out for a month like Porzingis is. So we should be better than Dallas. We should be better than Houston with all their turmoil, and I don't think their roster is better. We should be better than Utah. Dame, CJ Nurk, I'd take any day over Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, and Bogdanovic, and our depth, I think, is better, right? But there are some, if the bench continues to play ISO ball, then it's not going to play up to its potential, and if Nurkic... Nurkic is a little bit of a question mark given how out of shape he was in the preseason. He didn't look that good in the preseason, and then CJ's out of shape. There are some question marks that could knock this team down. So I'm not saying that they're guaranteed or anything to finish 4th. They could finish 6th. They could finish 7th. They could definitely underachieve this year. All I'm saying is it would be an underachieving regular season if they finished below 4.
Yeah, I guess I have to see how that pans out, but overall, I can't disagree with that. I think they have enough talent and depth, and especially in a season where teams are going to get decimated at certain points between injuries and other factors. They're just too deep to be lower than that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and let me just go on a rant a little bit. This pisses me off, bro, because if you remember Nurkic in the preseason bubble games against Toronto, how hard he hustled, right? Diving on the floor in a game that doesn't count, right? Nurkic is a guy who's always generally hustled. But because he had a couple of preseason games where he didn't hustle, now you have people that'll say, Nurkic gives no effort, it pisses me off. And I don't agree with that. Because he's always been a guy who's hustled, dove on the floor. We saw it in the bubble when he came back from injury, one of his first games, he's diving on the floor, throwing the ball off Ibaka. So people end up too reactionary to 3 preseason games. This is kind of my example. This is Shervin's, okay? Because I don't agree that he didn't hustle and didn't in the bubble. That's blatantly false, Shervins. That's blatantly false. His conditioning has been a little bit of a question mark. We're lagging. Okay, we lagged for a sec. His conditioning has been a bit of a question mark, right? So, there's a difference between not giving effort and not being in shape, right? And struggling to give full effort. There's a difference between that. That's the thing. Nurkic ain't in shape. He's not in game shape. He did fall asleep, He didn't give effort on that play where Jokic cut right by him, but to say Nurkic doesn't ever give effort and act like he never hustles is just blatantly wrong, and it's being reactionary and a prisoner of the moment, I think, because Nurkic has always generally been a guy who's hustled. So I heavily disagree with Shervins and stuff he's saying in chat, and I it gets a little... Shervin, whatever. He doesn't deserve me to say his name right. No, I'm just kidding. But... No, I disagree with that. I feel like people are too reactionary to 3 preseason games where Nurkic is out of shape and he didn't have any time to practice before playing. He's barely even had a practice. He was late to training camp. Yeah, you know what I mean? Just Give him time. He's always been a guy who's hustled, and it's like people forget that after a couple preseason games where he's out of shape. I don't like that. I've never liked that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like people don't remember or choosing to ignore. This guy was all over the place before he got hurt. And his lack of movement and stuff like that, like people are saying he's slow-footed and stuff like that, he is not. For his size, how massive that guy is, he is not slow-footed. He's actually pretty agile. And that's why Stotts laid into him, because if Stotts didn't think he gave effort most of the time, he wouldn't lay into him when he didn't give effort on that play, you know? He would just be like, oh, great, get your ass on the bench, because, like, I don't trust you. You know what I mean?
Or he just wouldn't say anything like he does with CJ, who he never says anything to CJ. But
he was basically saying, Nurk, I know you're better than this. Like, what are you doing, man? I've never seen you like this. Like, why? What's going on with you? Like, come on, you know that's unacceptable. And I wish he would do that with all the players, like you said. But like, Nurk, it was all over the place. He's really good. He gets his guards through picks. He defends the rim. He's actually not terrible getting switched onto guards when he's in shape. Like I feel like his defense is becoming completely underrated at this point. And yes, we may look back on this and say maybe he's never the same, and maybe he doesn't ever recapture some of that stuff. But like, it's impossible to say based off a few preseason games now, and where he's had 2 weeks of practice and playing, and the bubble situation where he was coming off playing his first games after a devastating injury. You can't say that it's for sure a lack of effort or there's no other factors into that. Come on, like, give this guy a chance to get back into game shape, to get a bunch of games under his belt, to play it through a full season. It took Paul George a while. He came back and sucked a few games at the end of a season, and then he started playing well towards the end of the next year, getting back to normal. But he didn't look the same for a while either. It takes some time. Mm-hmm. Like, you're an elite athlete. You have to be able to trust your leg again, and that's not something that's easy to overcome, just going right back out there.
That's why it's ridiculous when people like Vivek say CJ and Nurk have not been the same players they were 2 years ago. Yeah, Nurkic broke his damn leg, okay? He broke his damn leg like a year and 9 months ago, and he's had, let me think, 14 games since he's broken his leg. He's played 14 games, and you're going to say, like, he's just not the same player, man. Like, bro, what do you expect within the first 14 games, and not counting preseason? Oh, but he looks bad and out of shape this preseason with no practice. And that's just the type of reactionary crap that I see. And the CJ not being the same player as he was 2 years ago, Vivek, that's just blatantly false. He said CJ's efficiency has fallen off a cliff. CJ last season was more efficient than he was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, CJ's true shooting percentage was 53.6%. Last year was 54.1%. Last year, CJ's assist percentage was better than it was 2 years ago. His turnover percentage was better than it was 2 years ago. I wouldn't say he was any worse defensively, so that narrative is completely false. I don't see any way how you can say that CJ is worse than he was 2 years ago. It doesn't add up statistically at all. He scores at the same rate. He rebounds at the same rate. He assists at a higher rate. He isn't worse defensively. His efficiency is slightly better. I don't understand that type of stuff, man. It's like, I don't know, man. That take is blatantly false. CJ isn't any worse than he was 2 years ago. I highly disagree with that as well. So,
but Tori passed the eye test 2 years ago. He doesn't anymore, according to Vivek.
Yeah. Okay, buddy. I mean, come on, man. Yeah, people have become harder on CJ McCollum, and people have become more frustrated with CJ McCollum. That doesn't mean he's any worse. That just means you're more frustrated with him and think he's worse. There's a difference there. But let's jump into the top three teams.
Real quick, let me just say two things. One, with CJ, we've talked about this a lot. he needs to become a better playmaker. He needs to pass, and he will become more efficient and get better shots because of the threat to pass. And two, with Nurkic, this dude is not a guy who is used to playing 32, 33, 34 minutes a game, which he was asked to do coming off an injury in the bubble and stuff like that. And the guy could not handle that minute load in the bubble, and he certainly won't be able to do it for a while as he works back into game shape. So like that's why it's good to have a deep team where he can maybe only play 24 minutes a game until he's ready for more minutes. But you saw that when he came over to Portland, he was not ready to play major minutes when he was traded to Portland, and he still is good enough to overcome some of that stuff. But
yeah, people need to chill, man, with some of their hot takes lately. It's kind of, honestly, the preseason hot takes made me not want to do I was going to do a preseason takeaways video, but all the preseason hot takes from a lot of Blazer fans made me not really want to put one out, just because of how many drastic hot takes there seemed to be that I didn't agree with, you know? I actually did put it out, but I just put it out as an article on the website instead of a video, so you guys can go view BlazersUpRest.com. I did put out preseason takeaways. You guys can read this after or whenever you want. But it just discouraged me, man. It was like, okay, I'm just gonna take this weekend just to take a couple day mental break before we get into the season where we have a game every other day. Just because it was like, bro, like it didn't help the team played bad, so I felt like, okay, what am I gonna say a bunch of negative things and like try and spin them positive? Like it was hard in that regard. But then there's so many preseason hot takes, man, and it just wears me down. It's just like so many of them are just so reactionary and like emotional and don't really have substance to back it up that it's just, I don't know. I don't like it. You know, it's not fun to deal with. You know, so.
Okay, so Vivek, you've crossed the line, man. So Plumlee is not a good defender, first of all. Second of all, he's saying Mason Plumlee would be better on this team than Nurkic, which is okay.
See, that's exactly, bro. That is exactly my point. What is with all the? Oh my god, that's exactly my point. What the hell?
Okay, no,
talking about?
I didn't mean like in a blocking type way.
Reese blocked him. I mean,
don't.
He's allowed to say his takes. Okay. Yeah, he didn't mean cross the line like ban him.
Vivek, when you come back from your 5-minute ban, I have a proposition for you. Okay, you said the Blazers won't make the playoffs. How about this? If the Blazers make the playoffs, I get to tell you to shut up whenever I want on stream and stop talking, and you have to obey that, okay? If they do not make the playoffs, I will allow you to say whatever the heck you want in chat whenever you want, and you will get, as long as you don't, like, cross the line with, like, swearing at people or like personal attacks and stuff like that. You can do whatever you want in chat, and I will give you a protection level that no one can say anything to you. So do we have a deal there when you come back?
I'm on board. I'm on board with that. Let's do it, man. Vivek is the king of reactionary takes, man. That is his thing. Come on now. We're not going to make the playoffs and Plumlee is better than Nurkic. I mean, you're entitled to your opinions, but Vivek, it seems like your opinions are a little bit like emotional and reactionary and almost as if you're trolling, but he does it so much that I think he's serious. So I don't know. But yeah, no, Plumlee is not as good as Nurkic. Come on now, man.
Well, he also thinks we'd be better off just getting rid of CJ for nothing and just playing bench guys.
Come on, Vivek. Come on, Vivek. You're Vivek. You're better than that. Come on, man. Let's.
I don't know.
Anyway, it's been a little bit since we've actually had an argument with anybody in chat. You know, and honestly, it's been a lot of trolls and a lot of people that agrees with us. So honestly, this was kind of fun. It got me feeling good in a weird way. You know. Anyway, let's jump into the top 3 teams in the West. You got Denver 3, I assume.
Yeah.
Clippers 2, Lakers 1.
Yeah, I think the Lakers are easily one. The only thing I'll say to that is the thing I've been saying all along is that I could definitely see a team like the Clippers with load management and stuff like that. Just same thing I said about the Nets, where they care more about just making the playoffs versus trying to grind or possibly ruining some of their players just getting there. But yeah, I think it's shaken up to be pretty solid that way. I think Denver's losses were a little. I think it's overrated how much depth they lost. If they have some injuries, they could be in trouble. But I think overall they have the pieces to be a pretty interesting team.
Yeah, I agree. I think Denver took a little bit of a step back. You know, you lost Plumlee. You lost Yusuf Plumlee. They lost Jeremy Grant. They lost Torrey Craig. They did take a little bit of a step back, especially in terms of their depth. So I think that'll hurt them a little bit, but I still think they'll be able to maintain the 3 seed, and I think some other guys will step up a little bit and replace a little bit of that void. The Clippers, I don't think are worse. The Lakers are definitely better. I think that's kind of how it shakes out there.
I think unless it's just how bad Portland is, they found Jokic Jr. and Isaiah Hartenstein. So
yeah. I mean, Isaiah Hartenstein was a underrated pickup for them for sure, but yeah. I mean, if Plumlee is as good as Nurkic, then Hartenstein is as good as Jokic in my book. So, I mean, Denver, they should. I'll be shocked if they're not top 4. I'll be more shocked if they're not top 4 than if Portland's not top 4. I think Portland has more question marks than them. The Clippers, they could drop down depending on how they load manage guys and if they deal with like an injury to PG or Kawhi. But in terms of just talent level, they are the second best team in the West. Ibaka honestly might be better for them than Montrez was just because he's a better fit and better defending the pick and roll. And it seemed like Denver kind of targeted Montrez in the pick and roll during the final 3 games of that Western Conference semifinal series. And you're not going to be able to target a guy like Serge Ibaka the same way. And Serge Ibaka provides more floor spacing. So, you know, not even necessarily that he is the better player, but he's a far, far better fit for the rest of their roster. So I don't think the Clippers got any worse. They did lose JaMychal Green, which was an underrated player for them, but they brought in Luke Kennard, a good pickup, and they still kind of have some question marks at point guard, so it's not like they're flawless at all, you know, and you got Pandemic P there, so yeah, they're definitely not flawless, but still second most talented team. And then you got the Lakers number 1 that probably upgrade their roster. There's some fit questions there, but I still think they definitely number 1.
Yep, completely agree with everything you said.
Yeah, I don't even want to talk about the Lakers being good. So
we did that on a stream that weekend after the Sunday of free agency. I think it was like November 20th. Go look up that stream if you want.
Yep. I don't want to talk about these LA teams being good, man. Honestly, I don't really care. So I mean, like, we know what those teams are going to be. You know, pretty much every other team in the league has some question marks, so it's fun to talk about the question marks. We pretty much know what Denver and the LA teams are going to be, so don't even really need to touch on them other than Michael Porter Jr. is the worst player in the league. And yeah, so I gotta disclaim that. I wish I could joke like that, but I know there's probably people watching this that are like, wait, what? That don't know the inside joke. Okay, I don't like Michael Porter Jr. That's a fact, actually. That's not a joke, but you know, hey, man, if they, like, mandate the vaccine, he might miss the playoffs. So, I don't know. He's an interesting guy. But his game, I think, is a bit overrated. He's going to have to step up this year with the guys that they're losing. He's a terrible defender. That's the question marks there. Like, Denver has some question marks. I'm just trying to get away from, you know, any talk about the vaccine, since that's not what this channel is about. But we had our 3-month stretch during quarantine period where it was like that was constant talk. So it's nice to actually avoid it. So yeah, I'm just going to shuffle away from the fact that he probably ain't going to take that thing. Who knows how that sorts itself out? I'm just not even going to address that.
Well, let's go back to Vivek, since he's back now. He hasn't addressed my question to him. I don't know if he just ignores whatever we say and just types away in chat.
Probably.
That's probably what's happening. But Vivek, man, are you gonna address my deal I proposed to you?
We'll just listen to that buzz and that train in the background. You got a train in the background?
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, Vivek.
What was the question? Okay.
I don't remember. No, you can rewind. You can rewind and comment on this stream. We ain't gonna readdress that because we can tell them to be quiet anytime we want anyway. So there's not really much of a win for us.
There's a difference between like basically being able to do that and him respecting that whenever I tell him to, and us just having to ban him every time or put him in timeout. I don't like to do that with people who are just giving their opinion, but he just keeps saying the same stuff over and over again. It's kind of
Bro, at some point, your opinions become a little too ridiculous, right? Plumlee as good as Nurkic was probably the worst take I've heard this preseason. Congrats, Vivek. Yeah, so I don't know. The end of the stream is kind of all over the place. Yeah, this end of the stream's all over the place. There's no flow to the end of this, so
that's our preview, guys.
Yeah, that is our preview. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. You guys can leave a comment on the stream and give us your standings predictions. After the stream is over, you can leave a comment, give us your standings predictions. It'd be cool to read some of your standings predictions and see how Blazer fans feel the standings are going to be. It'll be interesting to see Vivek's and just how low the Blazers are in his standings predictions. Other than that, we'll be live on Wednesday. I will finally drop that seasonal content video tomorrow. I've been pushing that off. But BlazersUprise.com will have... the site's already launched. I just haven't really formally announced it in a video yet, but the site has launched, and my article that I posted a little earlier today, 5 preseason takeaways, will be on the website if you want to read it. If not, thank you for your support and thank you for tuning in for this stream. We will catch you guys later. The next time we'll be live will be right before that Blazer game on Wednesday, 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. We'll have picks against the spread, and we'll have our normal Blazers Uprise live back to how it was last season before the world went crazy. So can't wait for it. Hope you guys tune in, and we will have the post-game show later that night over on the main channel on Blazers Uprise. Our post-game shows for the regular season will be back over there. Yeah, so
I want to win.
Yeah. So do I.
A good start.
that would be nice. But this team, things will probably get blazery at some point. So we'll be here through the good and the bad. Other than that, nothing else to plug. Mailbag video is Eric's this week. Tomorrow, next day. When's the? Do you have a?
Should be within the next 2 days. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you're pretty busy. So should next 2 days. Whenever. Not trying to rush you or put you on the spot or put pressure on you or anything.
I didn't like the questions either, but
really, yeah. Was it a lot of recycled ones or a lot of ones?
Like almost every question was one we've answered in a recent mailbag, and then yeah. You guys gotta get more creative with your questions. Definitely, I do pick and choose a little bit more, especially since we've been doing them so consistently the past few weeks. It's I do. Definitely pick and choose based on stuff we haven't answered. We will catch you guys on Wednesday. Until then, I hope you guys have a good rest of your night. We'll catch you guys next time. This outro has no flow either, and that's all good. I don't care. As always, peace out. Go Blazers.